There's three things that I think are important to this business. The first one is love. We have to love our clients, have a sense of urgency for them, and care about what they're dealing with. We have to love each other and make sure that we support each other and care about the team.
Yeah.
And then there's communication. Sometimes the client wants to know everything that you're doing. Sometimes they don't want to know anything. They just want it fixed.
Right.
And you have to kind of judge that and make sure that you share what the appropriate amount of information is. But it's also communication back to the business, because we need to know what you're doing. We need to know that ticket has been worked or that problem is solved, what your needs are. We keep the snack room, so let her know what you want as far as snacks goes. It's something that simple. Time sheets have to be in at a certain time, communication.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is the IT. Now, IT doesn't grow my business. Anybody can do the IT. Anybody can do the cybersecurity. Anybody can do that. Anybody in town, can do that. But it's the love and the communication that have helped to grow the business, and it's what's going to continue to grow the business.
That's what sets you apart.
It really does.
Out west where the sun always beams bright, Midland skies keep the hustle in sight. BAM Consulting's got the blueprint intact. For dreamers on the grind, they got your back. Championing dreams from the ground to supreme, providing that spark, igniting the team. Marketing flow strategies that glean. BAM in Midland, building your dream.
Bam! All right, folks. We are here with Mr. John Brenner, owner of West Texas IT Consulting.
Hello.
How you doing, John?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's an honor to have you on. And looking forward to the discussion, because there's a lot to talk about.
Sure, you bet.
Yeah, right off the bat, tell us about West Texas IT Consulting and John Brenner.
Okay, I started the company in 2010, and it was just me for about 18 months working out of the house, and got really busy. My first real hire was in 2012. We discovered what it was to be an MSP, which is a managed service provider, in about 2017. We've been kind of a hybrid, a mix between managed services and a break-fix shop up to this point, and we're going through a change to the business model so that we can become more of a pure MSP and take care of our contract clients a little bit better. So,
pure MSP.
Right.
So there's different levels.
Well, there are. As long as you have a break-fix out there, it's unpredictable. And it's unpredictable income and unpredictable work, and it's very difficult with the number of clients that we have now. We're a victim of our own success. We've done so well that we have so many clients, and we just have to do well. If the client does the things that we need them to do, then they're more secure and their needs are less, and so we're able to take care of them a lot easier. And so if we're able to get people over into the MSP, then they're agreeing to let us make sure they're secure and that things are running well and their needs are less, and so it's a lot easier to take care of them. So
So you're streamlining what you do.
We are. The way that I would describe it is, if you're a managed services client, you have chocolate cake. If you're not, and you're a break-fix client and you say, well, I want this, but I don't really think I need that or I need that, then you only have a couple of ingredients. And I don't have any expectation that those ingredients are going to keep you secure. And so we have developed these packages that we apply. And if you want to get cybersecurity insurance, we want to make sure that you can check every box. And that would make your premium less, and it'd be a lot easier for you to get that coverage.
Okay, so there's lots of benefits for going that direction.
We're also an ISO certified shop, ISO 27001. What that means is that the information security management system that we use for ourselves and our clients is up to ISO standards, and they're very strict standards. We have a lot of policies and procedures, and it has everything to do with our own physical security as well as how we manage and maintain our clients. And so we're under this obligation now to take care of clients in a certain way. And those break-fix clients that it's not that they refuse, but they haven't had an event, and so they don't think they need this or that. And so we have to either bring them over into the MSP and secure them properly, or maybe eventually let them go.
Okay.
And that would be how we would become more of that pure MSP. So.
Gotcha. Okay. But it didn't happen overnight.
Sure.
It took a long time to get here. Yeah. Long days from working solo. You're a solopreneur for 18 months?
About that. So what happened was I was working for Boeing, writing code for the Apache helicopter. And I loved that company and those people. And that machine, it was an amazing job, but they wanted me on site every week. And so I traveled 44 weeks a year for 2 years with Boeing, with young kids crying every time I'd leave and stuff. And
Yeah.
it was hard. And so on January 1st of 2010, I said I just bit the bullet, had no money and no clients. And about a week or 10 days after I started, a little old lady took 15 of my cards to her investment club, and then 15 cards to her bridge club, and then 15 cards to her supper club. And so I started with 60 little old ladies, basically.
Oh, wow.
And some of them didn't really need work. You know, I'd go and fix their printer, and then we'd sit and have a martini and play Words with Friends on the iPad or something.
Yeah.
But they really did keep food on the table and helped me to get my business going.
Yeah.
Asked their husbands to use me for their business, and my business pretty much took off at that point.
Yeah.
And I was about after 3 or 4 months, I was working 7 to 7 Monday through Saturday. So I was pretty much running myself into the ground.
Yeah.
And when you have 100 bosses calling you, it becomes very difficult because you have to make promises, and then if it takes you longer, then you have to delay that promise. And
Right.
so that's when I was having to schedule people 3 weeks out, and they were starting to say, I just can't wait that long. And that was when I started thinking about hiring my first person, which was my money that I had to give away to somebody else. And so that was difficult
Yes.
to do.
Yeah.
And we didn't feel like I had enough money to pay taxes for a while, too. And so I let my taxes go for about a year and a half. I just was trying to
Yeah.
eat and keep the electricity on and stuff. And when we finally made good with the IRS, that took probably 3 years to get that paid.
Yeah.
And but you know I wanted to do the right thing.
For sure.
And so we had to go through that.
Yeah.
It's just part of the growth of it.
It's part of business, and I love that you said 100 bosses calling me, right? Because that, so when people, I'm going to work for myself. I don't want a boss anymore.
Sure.
Oh, well, you traded one for 100
Yes,
or hundreds.
you
You
bet.
know,
Yes.
you want hundreds of bosses.
Right, sure,
Because
sure.
your customer determines that.
That's right.
Because it's
That's right.
having a business is all about the end user, right? For
Right.
terminology.
Sure,
right?
sure.
And so you have to set expectations. You have to manage, mitigate issues.
And you have to do all the billing. I mean, if you're working for yourself, it's not just the work; it's also the invoicing and,
Yeah.
the bookkeeping and stuff that you've got to do. And so
Yeah.
that was educational for me,
sure.
because had to find the tools that would make that as easy as possible. And being an IT guy, I was open to like the thing that plugs into your phone and you just swipe the card.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I did everything that I could to help me on the administrative side, so that I didn't have to work all day Sunday trying to figure that out. And I ended up doing that
Anyways.
many times too. So you bet. So,
Yeah, when we first started here, it's just 24/7, 7 days a week,
wearing many hats.
all the hats.
Sure.
From cleaning the restrooms to doing the books.
Sure.
And I had no idea what I was doing with the books.
Right.
I'm all right at math, but it's not just math, right?
Right. Sure.
So when you're changing all those hats, one in, one out, and sometimes you're wearing 2 or 3 at the exact same moment.
Right.
Is there anything that you look back and when you started your company in 2010, anything you would have done different now in retrospect?
Well, what I did, and in retrospect, it really wasn't necessary, but I was trying to build a client base, and so I did a great deal of discounting. If I felt like it took me a little bit too long to do something, I wanted to be fair as possible with the billing. And of course, a lot of these little old ladies were on a fixed income, and so I can't charge them, for 3 hours, and then they have this $400 bill or whatever that was. Right. And my rates were low, and that would be something that I would think that we would want to talk about, because I talked to an attorney one time that I was helping, and I asked him, I was like, how do you figure out how to charge for your services? Yeah. And he said, John, if you don't have the clients that you need to lower your rates. And then when you get busy and you all of a sudden realize you have too many clients, then you need to raise your rates to shed some of those clients, so you find that healthy mix between your billing rate and the number of clients that you have. And so, of course, that conversation when I was alone, I was by myself, and so now there's 10 of us plus me, and so that you have to make those adjustments. It's not like we're jacking up our prices because we have the capacity, but that was really good advice at first too, and it really helped me to find that point. I ended up at about $75 an hour, which was reasonable for most, and it helped to kind of put food on the table, really, at that point. Yeah.
The pricing strategy, it differs from business to business.
Sure.
Your service business,
right?
And it's sometimes it's hard to quantify because there's no physical product.
Right.
There's no, hey, it took me X amount to build this.
Sure.
I'm just going to mark it up to make the margin,
right?
But when you are putting your time into it, then you have to consider your expertise.
Sure.
Like
research and development.
Research and
stuff like that.
I always like to bring up the Picasso analogy here, right?
Right.
So there's a story of him. He was in the cafe when he was, much older, scribbling on a napkin some art. And when he was finished with it, he was just drinking his coffee. He was going to throw it away. This lady asked him for it, and, she wanted it for free, and he told her a price that was, a Picasso, right? And she was like, oh my gosh, you did that in 5 minutes. He's like, no, that took me 60 years.
Sure.
So you're also putting in your time, your research and development, your expertise into that.
Right.
So it is, but then also, well, what is reasonable for you to be at a place for an hour to fix an issue?
Right. Right. So I review every ticket still. I do. And sometimes we'll see the text that says printer or trouble with the printer, and I see 4 hours on that ticket. And so I always open those tickets up and I look through them. And many times, yes, it's the printer, but we also fix their email and we also did this and did that. And so in those cases, then that justifies that time because all of those notes go into the invoice. But sometimes the guy just sit there, scratch his head for an hour and a half, and you just you got to be fair with the billing, because what we're looking for as a company are long-term relationships. We keep our clients because we show up when we're supposed to, we answer the phone, we respond according to the contract, and it's helped to build our reputation and all of that. One interesting thing, I don't want to gloss over it, you were talking about packaging and pricing. And we've been going through a lot of study of that, looking at our cash analysis where we can determine how much seat that we manage, like a computer, how much that costs us. And so I need 70% margin on everything that we do. Every product that we sell, everything that we sell, I need a 70% margin. And so what you do is you try to put those things, those cost of goods sold, into the right bucket, and also calculate the labor that it takes to, because labor is part of that cost of goods sold. And that helps you determine if you're making the margin that you need. And then you can also make adjustments to your pricing based on that. Now, you have to make sure that the value proposition is worth what you're charging, of course. In a sale, what I've been doing lately is I've kind of changed the sale process. I used to tell the story about being a rescue swimmer and working on the Apache helicopter, and people love that story and they're grateful that I'm a veteran, and so that's kind of pushed a lot of sales over the edge, just the story. But the people that come after me, the salesmen that I'm going to hire and the people that are going to be forwarding the business on my behalf if I'm out of town or whatever, they're not going to have that story. And so we have to have a process. And so what we've been doing lately, or what I've been doing lately, is I go in and visit with a client and I ask them a bunch of questions. Where's the pain? What would shut you down? What are your expectations? And just show a real interest in finding out more about where the customer feels they need to be as far as their security. And then the second part of the conversation, you talk about that value proposition, what you bring to the table, all of the things that you can button up for that client so that they don't have to worry about their security, their network, their environment, so that they're humming. And what you really want to do is you want to sell to them before you talk about what it costs.
Yes.
You want to make sure that they understand that this is something that they've got to have. because it is something that every company needs. But you have to kind of use that Q&A at the beginning to shape the value proposition that you present. And then at the end, you talk about the price, and it's a quick conversation, and they've already accepted the need for it. And that's how I'm trying to train the people that I'm moving into those sales and sales positions.
BAM! Welcome to the BAM BizTalk podcast, where we cut through the fluff and dive straight into the real-world wins and lessons of entrepreneurship. This isn't just another podcast. It's your toolkit for building and learning what it really takes to grow and thrive in business as well as in life. I'm your humbly eccentric host, Angel Garcia, co-founder and CEO of BAM Entrepreneurial Center, and I'm here to pull back the curtain on the strategies, hacks, and habits of successful business owners who've been in the trenches. Each week, we'll bring you unfiltered stories from entrepreneurs who have been there, done that, and lived to tell the tale. We'll uncover the moments that shape their businesses, the wins, the stumbles, and the lessons they learned the hard way so you don't have to. It's about real talk, actionable insights, and practical strategies to help you go from where you are to where you want to be. So, if you're hungry for inspiration, thirsty for knowledge, and ready to make moves, you've found your tribe. So let's dive in, get real, and build something extraordinary. You're now tuned in to the BAM BizTalk podcast, the playbook for the bold.
It's a process, right? You're laying it down from step one, problem, solution, to sign you up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
Walking them down.
Right.
And that's it works, right? It's amazing how the approach.
Sure. Sure.
Because for sure, when you have a story, you're talking to them, and obviously when you're talking about the problem, they recognize, okay, he knows what he's doing. One, right? They trust you.
Sure.
Then you're telling them your story. Oh, okay, let's do it, whatever the cost is. But you're right. Now you're growing. Now you're bringing in people who don't have your story. It's not you, and they can't our owner.
Sure.
That might work here and there, but it's not a process.
Right. Well, and another thing is, I have the advantage. Our business is very complex. We've got products that are kind of bundled together, and they're for different purposes, different reasons, and there are products that are outside of the scope of those contracts that we also offer in case they want this or that, or web design, or just whatever that might be. And I have the advantage of knowing every single in and out of every single tool and how it works and how it integrates, because that's, as a business owner, you have to know about what you sell and what you offer. And the technicians that are going to become salesmen or salesmen that we bring in, there's a learning curve there. Even if they've been there 5 years, they don't know every in and out of every product. And so I think that the more comfortable you are discussing it, which gives you more credibility.
Right.
And so we have a rigorous training program. It's part of that ISO certification.
Okay.
To get recertified, we have to show improvement in almost every area. And so every month I go through a portion of that certification and work through if there needs to be updates to our documents or policies or procedures. And we always make sure that there's training on the calendar every week for every employee for the products and services. We also, each technician I send to a conference every year in Vegas or Orlando or Seattle or wherever that conference might be. And I consider that R&D. It does energize those technicians. I send them together. I send 2 and 2 so that they can help each other and collaborate and just be there if anybody needs anything. But they come back so energized and so excited, and they come into my office and they go, "We've got to have this." And I'm like, "Okay, slow down a little bit," But it's really fun to see that, and they're all grateful having opportunities, and
for sure.
And it really does. It makes them, of course, more loyal, but it creates retention. I mean, our benefits are really good, but that's a really nice thing for them to get a week in Vegas.
For sure.
And to be able to interact with those vendors and get an understanding of what else is out there, the new technologies. And a lot of those conferences are talking about AI right now.
Yes.
And we're integrating AI into our processes for the help desk and also for the business. I have a commercial account for ChatGPT.
There you go. Got it. Yeah.
Okay. And what we're doing is we're teaching our projects that we create, we're teaching them about the business so that if anybody has a question, they just ask, and that it'll regurgitate the answer about our business.
Right.
So when you have a commercial account, you can create that where, and you do get information from outside, but you're able to teach it about your own business
Right.
and stuff. So we're real excited about that.
It's amazing, right? You can upload all your own IP, right?
You can.
Yeah, and only what you want the customers to know, right?
Sure.
Right,
Sure.
and having that, it's amazing, right? You have a chat bot; they can just chat. So now you're available 24/7.
Right. We're purchasing a tool soon. We have brought the help desk back in house. It was out in California with a wonderful company. I do love them, but we needed more control over how quickly we responded to those remote tickets. And so the AI that we're going to add to the help desk it's a level 1, level 2 assistant. So it gathers information from the whole world, and if there's a printer problem or a drive won't connect to it, the chat or the AI says, why don't you try this first? And the help desk technician can try that, and if that doesn't work, there's another suggestion. And so
Gotcha.
whatever skill level we have there at the help desk, Desiree, who's our lead, she probably wouldn't need that hardly at all because she
Right.
knows what to do. And But when I hire these 2 new techs on Monday, and one of them comes in behind her, they'll have some assistance when it comes to how to fix those things.
Yeah.
And it'll enable them to be a little bit better, responsive, and get those tickets closed a little bit faster. So
Right.
so-
It takes care of a lot of the smaller items. That,
Yeah, you bet.
And then that allows you and your team, the technicians, to dig into the real problems.
Sure, and to handle more,
Yeah.
over a shorter period of time. Too.
For sure.
And another part of it, Angel, is as an IT company, I believe, and I don't know if this is true, but I believe that we have the greatest market share in Midland, and we're approaching that in Odessa. And I mean, that's just me. I mean, nobody's said that or anything, but I just kind of feel like our presence is quite large here. And I believe that we need to be a leader in the AI realm because it's coming.
Yeah.
And many of our clients are going to want to leverage that to save time or to create or increase their productivity or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And so we need to be really good at it ourselves and know how it works and how to train it and how it helps you so that when we get those questions, we can help our clients to move forward in that regard as well.
Absolutely.
So-
I love that. So it's my opinion that if you're a company, if you own a business anywhere in the world and you're not leaning into AI, you're setting yourself up for some trouble down the road reasonably soon here because you're not going to be able to compete with your competitors.
We're very good at it, Pod.
You know.
Sure.
Yeah, right, because it's a technical skill when you're working. It takes time, right?
So-
And so the margin, the novice right now, the margin between a novice, somebody who doesn't really engage the AI, with somebody who's been into it, the expert, that margin is the smallest right now that it's ever going to be.
That's right.
You
You're
know, so
absolutely
if
right.
you get in now, you have a chance to really learn it and make a difference in your company.
Sure.
You know, but that's something that I teach. I teach AI. Just weekend before last, I taught a class on AI, and I taught them how to create their own GPT.
Okay.
You know, and this one was pretty cool. It's a mastermind. So you pick 6 to 10 of your people you look up to, mentors, throughout history, right? Like Steve Jobs, Leonardo da Vinci,
Sure,
and
sure.
then you basically their bio and their through the internet with AI, and then you plug them in and you prompt up your prompt in your GPT, and then say you're a business owner and you come across this dilemma. I use it every day for
Sure,
anything,
you bet.
But what does my mastermind think of this? Put it in, and then they respond each one from their own perspective.
Right, because it has the history of all the decisions that they made and all the problems that they've encountered and
Correct.
all in their business, and so it might not be the exact answer, but it's very close.
Yes.
It's like having a receptionist, and at first she's not really sure about the decisions that you make, and she's not. So she has to come back and what about this and what about that, and over time she doesn't need you anymore because she knows I know what his answer is going to be, so let me just take care
Right.
of that, and I that goes.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah.
And then out of the 6 that I have, one that kind of resonates with, like I like that. That's the one. So then you take a deep dive and you ask that particular person even more and more and more.
Sure.
Then you get to go. I mean, I'm literally writing a whole newsletter because of that.
Right. Right. That's great. Well, also, what happens, I believe, is that your AI learns about you
Yes.
as well as feeding you information. It begins to learn about the things that you need and the things that, and so those things bubble up to the top and are much more available to you over time.
Yeah, it's when you say, I don't have to put my company name in there. I say me, and it'll BAM Consulting.
There you go.
They know the
That's
whole
right.
thing. I'll say,
That's
okay,
right. Sure.
that's my GPT now.
Figures out. So, yeah. And, there's some danger there. I mean, you hear about the Terminator and all that. And so I think as a human race, we need to really, really sit and understand it and
100%.
become a part of it, because the alternative is that it advances without us. And then that's where the danger lies, is we
Right.
won't have any control over that.
Right.
And so, this is totally off the wall. I'm sorry. But
No, you're good.
so Elon Musk has this company called Neuralink, and they implanted in several patients that were paraplegic or quadriplegic, one in particular that I saw the video on, and the number of nodes that they attached to his brain was like 20, but there were only like 4 of those that were active. The other 16 were spares, so to speak, if something happened with those. So this guy, who's in his late 20s, became the best video game player, and he can't be beat. And he'd have use of his arms or his legs. It's just brain power that he's using to move that mouse and stuff. And what was interesting about that whole thing to me is just one short blip that he said, the mouse moves before I think to move the mouse. The mouse is heading to the spot, and then I think about what I want to click on, and the mouse has already moved and clicked on that thing. And so there's something subconscious that is allows become better at that computer interface or whatever it is that he's working on, because there's some intuition there that your body and your brain because I'm standing here waving my hands while I'm talking, and that's it's the same thing. I think
Right.
you just subconsciously you have skills that you don't even know about. So,
And that's right, because I saw that. I believe he hit his back in a boating accident or something
like
that.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
So that goes. Have you read the book Blink? Are you aware of it?
I'm aware of it. I haven't.
That's kind of what they're talking about, right? So we do things that our eyes, our the senses aren't really picking up,
Right.
But just like that, the mouse started moving, the pointer started moving before he thought to go there,
Right.
Before he,
Right.
but was thinking
Sure.
to go there,
Sure.
And that's the intuition, that's the precursor,
To make a movement.
right.
You bet. Sure.
So that's what's moving. I believe what is guiding him before he thinks it consciously.
Right.
So everything you scan, when a decision comes in, instantaneously if it's a yes or no.
Right.
Is it a 1 or a 0?
Right.
Which direction are we going? But then consciousness, reality kicks in, and we start second guessing.
Sure.
And
complexities. Come up.
layers.
Sure.
How to get to the problem, to the solution of this huge mountain, really a little molehill, probably.
Right.
Yeah. That's
I hear you.
the human condition.
Yeah.
So decision-making process, thinking of how you make a decision in your business, that goes a long ways. Like we're talking about pricing. How do you make a decision on the pricing?
Sure.
That's a little more difficult because you're having to go through, it's like a test A, right? And then, okay, now you find, like marketing.
Sure.
Like get into marketing. You put different ads out, which one performs better. Then you kind of focus on this direction. Then you split that one up.
Sure. As a business owner, as a sole 100% business owner, the buck stops right here.
Yeah.
And if somebody steps through my office, whether it be a client or an employee, there's nobody else. And so I've got to give them an answer.
Yeah.
Now, I love that. I do really enjoy that. Now, I'm not bossy or anything like that. We all work for Elizabeth and Shauna. They run the office, and when I hire somebody, I explain, I'm the
not your
owner,
boss.
but you need to, we need to make them happy so that the business runs well. So, but anyway, it is important to willing and ready to give them that answer or find that answer. Another thing I think is important is, as a business owner, you never want to tell your employees that you're going to do something and not do it, because from that point on, no matter what you say, they're going to wonder, is this going to happen?
Right.
Do I really need to worry about this? Is he serious?
Yeah.
And so sometimes you might, if you were an employee or a vendor, you might think I'm dragging my feet, but I've got to make sure that it's going to benefit the business and that it's going to add value in some way. It doesn't necessarily need to make me money, but is it something that's going to really forward the business? And so
Right.
One of the things that a benefit we just added is I got everybody a membership at COM Aquatics. And so everybody on the team has the swimming pools or the gym available to them at any time. And it takes a long time to get benefits if you're a young company and you're growing, to be able to afford health insurance. And then I lost a lot of employees just because of gas. They were driving all over creation for me, and they were paying for their own gas, and they were like, I can't do this anymore. And so finally we got gas cards, and then we got, this and that. And so, as you need to worry about the quality of life of your people.
For sure.
Money, of course, helps, but there's a lot about the culture that
Absolutely.
that is really, it really creates retention if you them well. And another thing that's just another side is there's nothing that kills a good employee worse than keeping a bad employee. And letting somebody go is always hard, but you have to consider the company as a whole and the health of the company as a whole.
Right.
Because if you can really lose people, if you keep somebody that's been great but has the worst attitude, can really that you might think, well, they're making me money, and what would I do without them? But you have to think about the long term. And if you push out 3 or 4 good employees just because this one star is got this attitude and stuff, and so my crew right now is the best it's ever been. I have to close the door to the lab because they're laughing so loud, and they're like, I'm sorry, and I'm like, no. Keep it.
Good.
I just got to concentrate, so let me just close this door up, know. And we're hiring a couple of folks that don't really know a whole lot about IT, which is great because we can teach them what they know, what they need to know.
You're not having to correct.
Well, but the truth is that every case, they worry about where they're going. They're worried about, are they going to be able to fix it? And they come back, and this happened and that happened. And so they go through this period of just to get their feet wet, I guess. And then about 2.5 months, maybe 2 months in, this light goes on. And they realize that they have this group of people that is so willing to help them be successful, because nobody wants to go behind them and fix it. And we want them to enjoy their work and all of that.
Yeah.
When it was just me, there was nobody.
Right.
But I had a whole bunch of programming and real, big corporate type IT work. And so I was less worried about it, but I went through a lot of that too. What if I can't fix it? But now there's a team of us, and we support them and make sure that they are well trained and they go out there and can be successful. But after they get a couple of wins under their belt, they think, oh, okay, well, this is something that I can really do. And then you start to see them begin to flower and dig into the training and start to really enjoy it. And that's when they get a bump in salary. And so, it's an evolution. You can kind of watch it,
Absolutely. That's a beautiful thing, right? That you're talking about employees and creating that culture, and it's the small things that matter a lot. Because we're humans, right? So money's great, right? But then when you add the extra benefit, like a gym membership, the swimming, that is really like, oh, they're my off time.
Sure.
John's thinking about me in my off time when I'm not on the clock.
Right.
Right. And when you have a boss like that, that goes a long ways. And hey, I really like this company. I like these people, and you feel like you're part of something. There's more. It's a mission. We're a team on a mission.
Right.
There's buy-in from the employee, and that's what you're looking for.
Sure.
It's like a lot of employees leave micromanagement.
Sure.
They don't like by the minute on the clock.
All that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and you said earlier that I kind of learned myself. I would talk out loud, thinking through problems. And I've learned to, when I do that, and I have an employee around, I have to mitigate what I say. I just can't throw spaghetti at the wall, and like, okay, yeah, I think we're gonna go that direction. Because I could just be thinking it through on the spot, on the fly.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the direction I am going to go, but I'm pretty convinced in the moment that's a good idea.
Right.
But
everything kind of fell into place at that
Yeah.
moment, and so
just coming out.
Right.
But then I sleep, wake up the next day and say, oh, wait,
I didn't think about this or that. So
right.
sure,
So,
sure.
But then my employee already thinks that we're going that direction.
Sure.
So I have had to learn to not do that, but what's helped a lot with that, AI. Now I can talk with AI about it.
And you can get that feedback
Immediate, yeah.
And so,
And
sure. And it helps you to make those decisions a little bit. Well, maybe not more quickly, but you're much informed.
Yes.
I think that's really what that is, So,
Right, because there's always knowledge, and then the actuation on that knowledge, but it's the pertinent knowledge that you're looking for.
Well, it's how, you run your business in a specific way. And what you get out of AI is not that. Now, over time, it learns about how you run your business, and so the answers are more tailored to the way that you would do things.
Right.
But whenever I had an employee who's young, very cute guy, really neat kid, really good at IT. And he wrote a few emails and copied me because I like to be copied on things, not as a micromanager, but just kind of so I know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I read through this short paragraph, and midway through, I was like, no, dude, you used AI for this.
It just copy
And
pasted.
so I called him in the office, and I was like, this does not sound like you. This does not sound like me. This sounds like AI, and I'd rather you didn't do that. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, I didn't really know how to say it. And so I said, okay, well, get the answer out of AI, paste it in, and then kind of go through it and like you would say it and kind of make a few changes so it doesn't sound like it came out of a robot.
Yeah.
And so that's, those things are easily handled,
For sure. So people listen, when you use the AI, I like to teach what's called split Pareto principle. Right?
Okay.
So the first part, right, the Pareto 80-20 rule, right, basically, right? 10%, that's what you're putting into human. We're putting in the context of the problem, right? And our goal, what we want the outcome to be like. AI does the heavy lifting, right? Does that middle percent, the 80.
Right.
And then the human has to come back at the end to humanize it.
Right.
Right?
You bet.
So even now when I tell okay, that's great, now rewrite it in my style. And it gets pretty close.
Right.
Make some adjustments.
A couple of little tweaks.
Yeah.
And it's how you would have written that. So,
Yeah.
Another thing I think is important here is, I'm part of a peer group, and we meet in Orlando once a quarter, and I'm in a pod. There's 42 pods now in this group, and I'm in a pod with 11 other companies. There's 12 of us, and I was selected as the captain, and so I know a whole lot about the program just because I have to, help organize our pod a little bit. And we're from all over the country. We're not in competing markets. We're at Niagara Falls and Sacramento and Tampa and Terre Haute, Indiana, all over the country. And so we can share our pricing. We share how we do things. I can give them letters that I send. They give me spreadsheets that help them with sales and this and that. And it's very, very beneficial.
Yeah.
Any business, if there's a peer group of your business, I would suggest that is so worth the money because they're encountering things or have encountered things that you will or have encountered, and it's a great way to help each other.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily need to be in non-competing markets, but it is something that adds a great deal of value, and I just think money well spent. Anyway, so one of the things that they offered to was a survey, a company culture survey.
Okay.
And if you have less than 5 employees, they have a different survey because it's easy to tell who said what, and they want it to be more anonymous. And so it's an anonymous survey, and it's about the company and the culture and what you like about it and what you think needs improvement and this and that. And we scored really, really well. We got an out of 100, and so our culture in all the different areas was pretty good. But the feedback, the really that stuck with me that a lot of employees said, I think, is that there was no clear path to promotion. We have technicians, we have a dispatcher, we have a controller, and where do I go from here? And that really kind of struck home, and we are growing, and I didn't want to just add more technicians and make these guys senior and these guys middle of the road, these guys junior. I had to kind of figure out a pathway to something to a different type job or a promotion. And so we're going to promote a technician into a sales role, and he's really excited about it, wants to do it. We're going to promote a technician out of the technician role into what we call a TAM, a Technology Alignment Manager. And what the TAM is going to do is he or she is going to go and visit with clients depending on the spend. So if we have a client that spends $10,000 or $15,000 a month with us, that's a big obligation. And so the TAM will go out there a couple of times a month, sit down with the office manager or the principal and figure out, what are you dealing with? How can we help you? What's coming up? Do you have any projects on the horizon? And so it will allow us to be more proactive rather than trying to react to those tickets. We can tackle things ahead of time. These computers are old, and so we can things before those computers die.
Yeah.
And we also have the VCIO role, which is a virtual chief information officer. Now I'm filling that role now because we just don't have anybody to move into that role, and we will someday. I'll hire somebody to fill that position, but the VCIO is going to go to the principal and make recommendations about what they need to do moving forward. The TAMs will report to the VCIO about that business and what they're dealing with and what's going on. And then it would be me that would go in and sit down with the principal and say, I know you're working through all these things and we have your project coming up in April. We need to get this much in your budget in order to do X, because that's kind of what I understand you're wanting to do. And that TAM role and VCIO role are really what set us apart from the other managed service providers. There are a lot of MSPs in the country. We have an advantage in West Texas having the technicians that are local. If our help desk is unable to fix it, we send that technician right away, because that's their job, is to support the help desk and make sure that those contract clients are taken care of. We want to exceed their expectations. That's really our goal every time. But the TAM and the VCIO role are going to allow us to keep the noise down, and so that client is not going to need us hardly at all.
Right.
And that is much more profitable for me, and we're not underfoot for them, and everything's working, and so they're pleased at that.
Yeah.
And so it's really going to work out well.
I like that. So, it was a technician who is going to be in the TAM role.
That's right.
So they've seen it.
They have.
Yeah, and the expectations, they know it.
Right. And I've promoted somebody into the help desk lead role. So I went from 6 technicians, and in a week or two, I'm going to have 3. And so I'm hiring a couple of young technicians on Monday, and we're going to try to get them trained up and working. And we're also looking for some brick and mortar. My wife and I have been looking for a building to purchase in Midland, and found a beautiful one today that's already closed, and kind of sad about that. But there's options around town.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to do, honestly, is I'd like to have an entity of mine buy that building and then rent it to West Texas IT Consulting.
There you go.
And then it's kind of a tax shelter for my company as far as that asset is and stuff. And
Absolutely.
So, I'm kind of working through that with my banker right now and stuff. And so
that's a good move.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
I do a lot of that structuring entities, and the holding company is so important.
Sure.
Especially when the level you're playing, it becomes crucial.
Sure.
It
does to protect your assets in a way that kind of separates them and still creates value between them. So
that's the key.
Sure.
Right, creating the value.
Right.
Because creating for you, but then it's helping you create value for your customers.
Right.
In the long run. Right.
Sure.
That's great. I'm where you're at, because like when we were talking yesterday, you're there, right? As a where you get to pull back, and take on a different kind of role.
Sure.
Right. Sure. You went from the hands-on, on the ground,
under the desk.
Exactly.
Sure.
Literally. Right.
Sure.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And to now you're of your own company, right? You take care of virtual problems online, right?
Sure.
That's what that is?
Yes, sir. Sir. Well, the virtual CIO is just, so I'm a chief information officer for all of my clients. Now, I'm virtual because I'm at my office, but I go and talk with them once I understand the story, a quarterly business review. I think that if you're a service business, that it's good to do that QBR for every client, every quarter, because you want to be present You don't want them to forget about you and think that, well, they haven't come and seen me in a year, so so you want to keep that rapport. But you also want to make sure that they know you care about their business and that you understand the direction that they're heading and stuff, because that creates retention. And that's where the real value is. We don't charge for onboarding, for instance, and it might take us 2 weeks to get a company on board. But if they pay us, $7,000 a month for 5 years, then, if I had raked them over the coals right at the beginning and they have a bad taste in their mouth about this huge bill right at the beginning. And so, I have each the cost.
For sure.
It's kind of like a realtor. My mom was a realtor for a long time. She founded Legacy Real Estate here in Midland so many years ago. Yeah. And she spent a lot of her own money selling a home. She would stage it, or she would, do this or that in order to, she'd pay the yard guy or whatever it was to make that house have a more curb appeal and stuff. And it would help to get that house sold faster because it looked cared for. And so that's what you need to do is you need to show I hire an employee, I go through spiel and the benefits and all that, and then I stop and I say, there's 3 things that I think are important to this business. The first one is love. We have to love our clients, have a sense of urgency for them, and care about what they're dealing with. We have to love each other and make sure that we support each other and care about the team. Yeah. And then there's communication. Sometimes the client wants to know everything that you're doing. Sometimes they don't want to know anything. They just want it fixed. Right. And you have to kind of judge that and make sure that you share what the appropriate amount of information is. But it's also communication back to the business, because we need to know what you're doing. We need to know that ticket has been worked or that problem is solved, what your needs are. We keep the snack room, so let her know what you want as far as snacks goes. It's something that simple. Time sheets have to be in at a certain time, communication. Yeah. And then the third thing is the IT. Now, IT grow my business. Anybody can do the IT. Anybody can do the cybersecurity. Anybody can do that. Anybody in town can do that. It's the love and the communication that have helped to grow the business, and it's what's going to continue to grow.
Yeah, that's what sets you apart.
It really the bottom line is we need to make sure they're secure and they're running smoothly, and so the IT, of course, very important, because if you can't do that right, then they're gone. Yeah. But that's not what grows the business. That keeps it. Yeah. But the love and the communication, and when they talk to their peers or the other companies, and they go, you know what, I just can't. What we had before compared to what we have now. We are so happy with West Texas IT Consulting, and I'm afraid to share them with you because I might lose a little bit of service, but that's not the case. We've been able to grow and stuff, and so it's been good. It's been good.
That's awesome. That's great because it's the experience that you're giving them, right? When it comes to marketing, it's all about the customer experience. Right. What's the customer journey? From when they find out about you, and they probably found out from referral, right? Huge, because who's glowing about isn't saying, oh, well, they fixed that so fast, this problem I had. They're just like, oh, they're great to work with, and
they call it by name. Oh, I hope you get Patrick, or I hope you get Desiree, or I hope you get Ryan. And we have, I think, 100 Google reviews or 98 Google reviews, and we have one, we had a star, and I was like, I'm so sorry. We'll fix it free, and please let us. And we did that. She went back in and she raised it up to a 4 for us, which was very nice. Yeah. She didn't need to do that, but at the same time, that wasn't about changing the review. It was about us doing the right thing. Right. And that's a big part of this business. And it's what makes, when IT guys are by themselves and they have 100 bosses and the pressure is tremendous and they're stretched in all these different directions, it's hard to complete a job sometimes right at first. You get 90% of the way through, and it's going to take 3 hours for that data to download, and so you're not going to sit there because you can't bill them for that time or whatever that is. But then you have 20 other clients that you have to go see in the next 3 or 4 days. Now, when do you get back and finish that job? Right. And it's very difficult when you're by yourself, because all of a sudden you have to inject all these finishes throughout your week just to make sure that you retain those clients, because they don't want to pay if they're not. And they also, it's hard to get recommended if you showed up on time, you did everything almost,
Almost.
You know, it doesn't count
Right.
in this business.
Right.
You know, and most business, almost is not good enough.
No.
I mean, construction or whatever it might be.
Construction would be an interesting one.
Sure.
It happens. Well, they almost completed it.
Yeah. They didn't finish. I mean, or whatever. So,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Hey there, bookworms and knowledge seekers. Ever wished you could find everything you need in one place? Look no further than the Ector County Library. We're not just about books, though we've got plenty of those, from the latest page-turners to classic favorites. We're talking free high-speed internet, tech classes to boost your skills, and awesome programs for all ages. Kids can dive into storytime adventures, teens can hang out and study, and adults can join book clubs or learn something new. There's always something exciting happening at the library. So whether you're a student looking for homework help, a job seeker needing resources, or just someone who loves to learn, we've got you covered. Swing by your local Ector County Library and see what we're all about. It's more than just books. It's a whole world of possibilities. Ector County Library. Your adventure starts here.
The BAM BizTalk podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Pachuco's Restaurant. Craving authentic and eclectic cuisine in Midland? Well, Pachuco's has you covered. Located in downtown Midland at the ever so legendary and iconic historic building at 316 North Big Spring Street, Pachuco's blends rich and unique flavors in a conveniently pleasant and vibrant atmosphere. Enjoy the highest quality barbecue, savory tacos, burgers, and a variety of other mouth-watering dishes that reflect the spirit of a true Pachuco cuisine. Real, authentic, and just plain different. Check out their menu at www.pachucos432.com or call 432-218-8806 to inquire, or better yet, just show up and get your shine on. At Pachucos, where heritage, exquisite taste, and hospitality come together for an unforgettable dining experience. Pachucos, Midland, Texas. Now back to the show.
Yeah, they're not getting referred out. No. So that's great. People are really getting a lot of value listening to this. You talk about your company and things that that you're implementing for your employees and how you look at your services, and provide to your customers. But what's been on my head is and we really glossed over, and I really want to get into this about you.
Okay.
So Apache helicopter,
Right.
The program.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So before, how did you get into programming? Was that something that always
here's
interested?
kind of a funny story that I'm going to tell you, and it skips, and we'll go back to it. So when I was on the battleship, I was in supply, but I was also the search and rescue swimmer for the battle group. Now, I wasn't a whole lot of good to the supply department during the conflict because I was either at the lifeboat or the helicopter in case something happened, and there were a few things that happened, but I wasn't inventory or for regular business process because we were flight ops or underway replenishment or whatever it was. I had to be on station. So they assigned me to the supply officer on board. And he had the only computer on board ship, black screen, green letters, 1987, old school stuff, which is really what launched me into this career. But the funny part is after I was with the captain, Commander McCrae, Captain McCrae, said, "John, I need you to get secret clearance." And I was like, "Okay, why?" And he said, "Well, we need to buy gray paint." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "Well, navy gray that the ships are painted with is a Navy secret. And so in order to buy Navy gray, you need secret clearance."
Wow.
So after I got out of the Navy and went to college and I worked in Latin America, and we'll talk about the programming and stuff, when I wanted to win that contract with Boeing, they said, "Well, you need to have secret clearance." And I was like, well, I just happen to have secret clearance. Now, I needed secret clearance for other things on the ship when I was there, but the reason I had to get that was from Navy gray paint. And so I won the contract with Boeing with the Apache because of Navy gray paint. So anyway, that's kind of a neat story. So I got out of the Navy and I went to tech. I was a little bit more mature the second time. I was out in one semester. I was just,
I've been there. Yes, I get it.
And so I got 2 degrees in 3 years. I took 18 hours a semester and just plowed through it. And I was sick at the end of every semester from all-nighters and all that.
Yeah.
But I needed to get started with my career. And so I have an international business and information systems. I had a great desire to go to the international business school called Thunderbird that's in Arizona. And so that's where I was looking for a job because I wanted to go to that international business school. And so I took Tracy, my new bride, out to Arizona, and I was fluent in Spanish from, being raised in Mexico and all my time in
Definitely
Spain.
wanna
And
get
so
into
they
that.
put me with the Latin America team, and they needed a programmer. And so I was so green, I didn't know anything about code or anything like that. And so they had me fixing bugs in the software that I was going to be working in. So I started fixing bugs, and I had people around me that were good programmers that I could lean on a little bit, and I got to be a little bit better and a little bit better. And then I became the lead for Latin America, and so I traveled a lot down to Costa Rica and Venezuela and Chile and Colombia
Wow,
and
nice.
Mexico. And a lot of times I went by myself because I had a great understanding of technical Spanish. I was fluent in Spanish. I understood their requirements, and then during the day we would have the meetings, and at night I would code. And so I'd work 90 hours a week or 92 hours a week, or but they were able to send just one resource down there that could accomplish the changes and modifications to the software.
Yeah.
And so I did that for about 10 years, and a software package has a life cycle. They start slow, and then they get real popular, and then after a while, and so at the kind of on the down slope of the software that I was working on and had been for 10 years, I started looking for another contract. And that company that I was working for had a contract for the manufacturing software for the Apache. And it wasn't for the Apache, it was for all of Boeing. So the manufacturing software was being applied from the company that I worked for. And so what I'd say I would code for the Apache, so that's a little misleading. It wasn't like I was writing the weapon systems in the Apache.
Yeah.
I tracked all the manufacturing processes that had to go into making one of those
Okay.
pieces of equipment. And so there were 51 departments, and each of them had a different role in the manufacturing process. And so I met with them on a regular basis and tracked their progress in the changeover from the old software to the new software. And so the code that I wrote was to every meeting that we had once a week, they would bring up my data first, and some people would groan because they were way behind, and some people were patting themselves on the back because they were so far ahead.
Yeah.
And we had to come together at a certain point in order to meet the deadlines and stuff like that. So it was a time in my life. I mean, that's wonderful people. The neat thing one of the neat things about them is no meeting was longer than 1 hour.
Hard cutoff.
1 hour. And it didn't matter what you were meeting about. You got a break. If you needed to meet again, you'd set up another meeting. But it allowed people to get other work done and stuff instead of being a meeting for 3 hours.
Yeah.
It was just a limit, that hard limit.
Yeah.
In those meetings, you couldn't answer the phone for your kid,
Wow.
but if your mama called,
Ah.
you could answer the phone. That was the rule.
That's the one.
And Mama calls, and one time the VP that was holding the meeting, he was like, "Mom, I'm in a meeting, my mom," and so that was kind of funny. Just a little aside there, but it was fun. So.
Yeah, that's a great experience. So that helped you. I mean, the manufacturing process for those
Sure.
that is wild.
Yeah.
So many different aspects. 51 different departments.
Yes.
Just that right there is
Yes.
kind of mind blowing.
It was. So in Mesa, Arizona, they make the Apache, but that's not the biggest thing that they make there. The biggest product they make in Mesa is they're called wiring harnesses. So when they build an aircraft, there needs to be all the wiring for that aircraft. And so there is a warehouse where they put that wiring harness together on these big boards, and they tie them together and make sure all the ends are ready and everything, and then when they take it to the plane, it's ready to go, and they insert that wiring harness into that aircraft or into that helicopter or whatever it was. And so wiring harnesses, that's really was the largest part of what they did there in Mesa, Arizona. So
Wow.
it's pretty neat.
Super cool.
Another neat thing about that is not giving away any secrets or anything. They had 10 stations. There were 2 rows of 5. And on Friday at 4, everybody that worked those Apaches would get out there and they would hand push them from the station they were in to the next station. And so in the first station, it came in as just a shell, and they would start to put the engine, or and then towards the end of that, they would be working on the cockpit and all that stuff. So you had a week to do what you needed to do, because on Friday that machine was going to be moved out of your section into the next section.
Yeah.
And so they had it real well organized and staffed. And so Fridays at 4, it was at 3:30 people were kind of wrapping it up, and then they'd move a helicopter out to start its trials. And they'd move in the shell into the back end. And so there were always 10 of them in that warehouse.
The assembly line for it.
Yeah, so it took about 10 weeks to a shell into a functioning Apache helicopter.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was neat. It was
Wow.
neat.
Yeah, to see that process from the shell to in flight,
And they took us out there to see it. They made sure that we understood, because, as far as I was concerned, because I had to track that manufacturing process for each of those departments and stuff.
Right.
And so it was a neat experience for me. So, and the people loved. They were a bunch of engineers, and they loved what they did.
Yeah.
And they were proud of what they did, and very patriotic. And I had just come out of the Navy, and so it was 10 years ago, but it was a great experience. Very, very American.
Yes, absolutely.
It was neat. It was neat.
Yeah, that is so cool.
Yeah.
But something else that you said there that I definitely wanted to talk about. So a large part of your childhood, you were in Mexico.
Yes, I did.
That is super, because your dad, he worked down there.
He was a cotton broker. So what Daddy did, when I was born, he worked for a company in Dallas called the Esteve Hermanos. Corporate office was in Barcelona, but they had an office in Dallas and an office in Mexico City. And so Daddy brokered cotton across the border to the maquiladoras that were in Puebla, north of Mexico City, and they would make the shirts. And then Dad would broker those shirts back across the border for Land's End and other, retailers. And so he had an opportunity to move to Mexico. And it was right about the time of the Vietnam War when people were getting drafted.
Yeah.
And, I don't think that he was skipping the draft. I don't think. But, it was about the time when folks were getting drafted. So we were down there in Mexico City during the Vietnam War. And we were there for, I guess, about 8 years.
Yeah.
I was 11 when we went to the States, and so everything was in Spanish. School in Spanish, and as a child, you soak it up, and so my accent is from being real young. And then when I was in Spain in my second tour of duty in the Navy, I was worked in shipping with 13 Spanish carpenters, and they corrected me, and I was like, bring it, come on.
Yeah.
And so when I left there, my Spanish was, pretty good by that time. And I traveled all over Latin America for 10 years, and so I might say lapicero, and people go, oh, Costa Rica. And well, because there's a pluma, there's a bolígrafo, and there's a lapicero, and it just kind of depends on what word comes out. And people go, oh, you're from this place or that place. And so, so anyway. Spanish is understandable throughout the world, of course, but there's, nuances.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The most beautiful Spanish it's like liquid gold. The way that they speak Spanish, it's the most beautiful thing down there. And I've heard Spanish from all over the world, really. But that was when I was sitting in meetings, I was just had my mouth hanging open from listening. They were high class people with real executive jobs, but that didn't really matter. You get out on the street and that liquid gold was everywhere. It was just so interesting to hear Spanish. So.
Yeah, your for that is palpable. The
thing about Spanish, or really about knowing another language, especially a Romance language, is the feelings that you feel are not the same. Love is different, anger is different, happiness is different, and so when there's a Hispanic person that doesn't know Spanish, I kind of feel sad that they don't know those feelings. That's their heritage. Those feelings are really the heritage more than anything else, and like double meaning, that's really the last thing that you learn when you're learning another language. You learn how to, bathroom and beer, and then you kind of start to learn how to communicate, and then finally you start understanding jokes, And then kind of at the end, you start understanding that double meaning. And when you get to that point, then you can have those feelings because
Right.
you know what they mean. There's not what they say,
Yeah.
it's what they mean. And so that's something that's really neat about knowing another language.
It's the nuance.
So,
the nuance in it.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
really, because fractal.
I'm not hearing your voice.
No? Hello?
Yeah, I'm hearing myself in there, but
But you don't hear it. Wow. That's.
sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's
I'm
good.
just not hearing you in my
That just started?
headphones. So it just started just a little while ago. So,
Okay. I don't know what that is.
well, hopefully this one's picking it up too, and I'm sure it is. But
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because my level's going up when
when you're talking,
yeah,
okay.
it's on there.
Well, it might not be a big deal.
So check. Still nothing, huh?
Well, you through just from there, but I'm not hearing you in my
In the headphones.
Yeah. So
Try this. So now you hear nothing, right?
now I hear. Yeah, I'm not hearing it.
All right. Check 1, check 2. Nothing. No. Because I can hear myself.
Okay. Well, probably fine. I didn't mean to off track. So.
No, you're good.
You know that setup that I do. I'm just, you got a great office here, man.
Oh,
It's
thank
really neat. Really neat place.
Thank you.
Bet.
Thank
Bet. You got to be comfortable. So I'm
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. It took me a year to move in after Michael passed away.
Yeah.
And I know that he was probably wanted to move in a lot sooner. He was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing, man? Come on, you got to get going." It was just hard.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's it's a life event, and so you gotta, sometimes you gotta wait until the right moment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
especially in a business, if you have $1 million, you don't want to spend $1 million.
Yeah.
You gotta figure out what's best. And maybe spending $10 right now is what you need to do, and
Right.
push the rest off until it's the time for it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I
No,
get it.
absolutely.
I get it.
We're pushing off right now.
Sure, yeah. And we're changing our business, and we have our bills are huge and all of that, but there's more that I want to do.
Right.
And so I have to, when can I do that? And what's our cash flow, our forecast? When are we going to be able to do that or buy that product or whatever that is? Because, with the number of endpoints that we have, as soon as we buy a product, we're charged for all those endpoints, even if we don't know how to use it or how to implement it,
Yeah.
or nobody's using it yet. We're not billing anybody yet for it. And so if I have 900 endpoints and it costs me, $5 an endpoint, I've just added $4,500 to my invoice, and I'm not using it yet. And so you have to be ready for that sort of thing. Now, my business is a little bit different, I know, but every business encounters those types of situations where, I got to pay all this money and I can't get it for 6 months from it.
Yeah.
But I've got to start. I got to learn. And the only way to do that is to start to pay. And that's money that I don't have for other things.
Yeah.
And so those decisions are, whenever whatever level you're at, those types of decisions are the ones that really, you gotta do a little sometimes. And can I bite the bullet right now? And how's this affect the people that work for me or my family or our profitability or whatever that might be?
Yeah.
So,
Is that on mission? Is we staying on our path?
that's right.
Or is it going to pull
That's
us
right.
off the path?
Right.
It might kind of line in different ways, but is that the one that we're looking for?
Sure.
Because a lot of options, that'll work. Oh no, that but
Sure.
which will.
And over time, the situation with your business is going to change.
Yes.
At the beginning, you don't have a lot of money, and you can't make those money types of decisions. You just have to pour your heart and soul into the service or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you reach a point where maybe not a turning point, but you reach a point where you have a little bit more money, but you don't want to shut your company down by buying those things. And then you get to a point where, okay, now we're profitable. I want to make sure I can pay people for 6 months if the floor falls out of this thing, and so I can't just go spend that $250,000 that's in the bank right now, because then I wouldn't have 6 months for my employees. And so, yes, we're profitable, but I can't go, buy myself a gun safe and a toolbox and all those things that I've wanted for all these years. I got to do, let's just, do this if we can.
Right.
I have plans to have a summer home and all that, but you just have to You have to,
Right.
it takes time.
It takes time.
A nephew who he wasn't really doing very well. I tried to get him to make some money, and we're like, well, why don't you go to HEB and work in the produce department or something, and then you could work there for a couple of years, maybe be a manager. And he goes, I don't want to do that forever. And the guy's 20, and it's like, son, this is not forever. We just need you to kind of get started, make a little bit of money, kind of putting your own gas in the car, and those kinds of things. And it was real hard for him as a young person to think about the long term. And when you're starting a business, really, you can only think about the first year or 2 years just because you want to make it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to think about that long term and make decisions that are long term. And so each month, evaluate where you are and kind of think, okay, how much farther can I plan now? I mean, after about a year, okay, now maybe I can think about 2 years ahead. And after you get 3 years behind you, then you have a client base, and you have processes in place, and maybe an employee or two, and then you can kind of think about what's possible.
Right.
An entrepreneur is not somebody that starts a business. An entrepreneur is somebody that is an entrepreneur the entire time they own that business, because those decisions change, and that you have to change. I had an accountant for a long time who was a wonderful man, but he was very conservative. And he was really kind of squashing our profitability because he was scared to really spend that money so we could start to make some money. So I let him go 3 years ago, and we have just exploded with profitability. Now, it wasn't his fault that we weren't profitable. It was just hard to, your accountant controls the money, and when you got to fight about that, it's difficult. And it's not like when I let him go, I just started splurging, but it allowed me to make some more of the decisions about where we could put that money and stuff. And so we do have an accounting firm that helps us with our taxes and all that. But I'm the one that makes the decisions now. And well, not now. I made them then, but I always had a little bit of pushback, or a lot of pushback. And now I'm, the buck stops here. I'm making the decisions, and I have this vision for the company, and so the decisions that I make are in line with that vision. Yeah. And as an entrepreneur, those decisions change over the course of the life of the business, and you need to think about, how long do I want to do this? If you get into something, if you're whatever kind of business you're wanting to do, you need to think about, is this a 10-year thing? Is this, the rest of my life kind of thing? Am I going to try to exit at some point, and how am I going to do that? And so having things like a cash plan so you can forecast, and a tax plan so you know how those things are supposed to work, to have a trust so that the assets that you have are protected, and having a succession plan. I think I have great that pays my family, and it's going to pay the business if I die. But I think everybody that works for me probably worries, what if John dies? What happens? Because you can exit a business either voluntarily or involuntarily. And so plan who's going to run the business, or what's going to happen to it, and all those kinds of things. When you're early in your business, those are less important because you're just trying to pay the bills, keep the lights on, and keep food on the table at home. And so it's hard to think about those things because you're not trying to exit, you're trying to build it. You want to build it. But as you mature, and as you start to you become profitable, and you begin to have assets, learning how to shelter yourself from those high taxes. We discovered that I was drawing out of profit. And what that means is that my salary, or what I drew, was not a cost of goods sold. It was just off of profit. And so we were paying taxes on the money that I would draw. So we became an S Corp, and I began to get a salary. And now my salary is the same as it was before, but now it's part of our cost of goods sold, and it's sheltered to an extent from those taxes. Or it's an expense. It's not a cost of goods sold. It's an expense. But somebody has to do the job that I do. If I'm not sitting in that chair, somebody is going to have, and they would have to be paid. So that money needs to be part of that payroll in order to account for that money properly. And then you understand your profitability a little bit more, and those numbers make a little bit more sense. And so anyway, I've been working those plans and just trying to make sure that once you develop those sort of things, they don't need to be changed a lot. When you figured those things out, then you benefit for years and years and years from those things, from your tax structure or from your forecasting or whatever that might be. And so sometime in the life of the business, when you start to feel like you might be getting over that hump, it would be, I would say, a good thing to do, because you can protect yourself, and you can you can free up your time, and you can have a whole lot more money. And if you need to be gone, you have a plan, and people can step in and take care of it. And
Right.
so anyway, I didn't mean to get off on all
No,
that.
I think those are great points. Most, when you first get into business, like you're saying, you're not thinking about those things.
Sure.
You're having to go find a job.
Yeah.
You're right. Keeping the lights on,
You bet.
keeping food on the table. So you're not thinking, okay, exit plan. You're not thinking retiring. You're not thinking selling the business. But one thing that I love about what you're there is so when I help somebody start a business, one of the things that I preach is build your business if you're going to sell it. Build your business doesn't say you have to sell it or you intend to sell it, but if you can have it turnkey, build it to a place to where you can step back and it's still running.
Policies, procedures, all
yes.
of that in place.
Yeah,
You bet.
SOPs.
Sure. Sure.
I'm not the organized person, right? I float around a lot,
Sure.
But have been since before I started the business, and I think that's a reason why I'm here now. Intentionally, I have practiced discipline. Admiral McRaven, he has that saying. I actually saw him give a speech in Austin where he said, if you want to change the world, start by changing your bed.
Make your bed.
Yeah. I've never made up my bed ever, like most of my life. But about mid-30s, I heard him speak in Austin at UT. And
Start with a win. Start your day with a win.
Yes.
It's that easy.
Yes.
And then all you have to do is build on that win and try to get another win and try to get another win. So
And it stacks.
That's
It stacks.
You bet.
Not that day, but over time, over years. Now being disciplined. I used to discipline. I'm free. Nothing. But I was trapped being.
Sure.
But with discipline, I feel there's a sense I didn't have before.
Sure.
And when I had that realization, it was internalized. Oh, that's what they mean.
You had structure to your life. It's like people think that creating budget means that they're going to have less money available.
Yeah.
And that is so the wrong
Yeah.
thinking. Because what a budget does is a budget helps you to allocate those things that you have to have, and then all of a sudden you realize, you know what, I do have more money budget, because I've got it all organized, I know where it's going, and I understand what I have to do to get to that point. And so a budget is it's hard to do. You just don't want to be. You don't want to know sometimes. I don't want to know a guy that doesn't want to go to the doctor because he doesn't want to find out what's wrong with him.
Yeah.
It's kind of a ridiculous thought process,
Right.
but I get it.
It's still happening. Yeah. When I started really digging into our financials, because we first started, I'm like, okay, we're just trying to make it, trying to do, we got to spend money, or hey, no, we don't have any money to spend, but when you get like a income statement, P&L, right, your cash flow, when you get into nuance and understand what your numbers are, you find things that, oh, wait, why are we spending money
You
there?
don't need to spend money on that.
Right.
Sure.
And what really got me, like, I would have fired myself if I was able to when I found out. But there was this charge that I was getting charged for months, right? And I never saw it come across. I never got invoices. I didn't know about it. Yes, just pulling out every month, right? Well, $1,300 later, I realized this. Oh my gosh.
I'm not using that service. I'm not. What?
Yeah. Yeah, and then you look at it on the statement, I'm like, what is that?
Sure.
What? And then, break it down to, the QuickBooks. I'm like, there it is. What is that? What is that? And sit down and, I'm not even using that.
Sure.
And it hurts.
Well, when you annualize it, those are big chunks of money.
Yes.
It might be $28 a month.
But
then when you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, I've spent $400 on my wife's gym membership and she hadn't been in 5 years, or whatever that is.
Right.
You really have to pay attention to
Yeah.
that, or have someone that's really good at doing that. And a good bookkeeper is
Yes.
tremendous.
Absolutely.
So I get into it because I'm interested, but she gets into it, into the nitty gritty, and she's been with me a long time, and she's just fantastic.
Yeah.
Elizabeth is really a wonderful person. She's a great mom, and
Yeah.
she worked for a company larger than mine before, but she's just been amazing for the company.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Having good people.
I've got an unbelievable team right now.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I met him yesterday.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
guys sponsored our Bam Burger Friday.
Right.
Thank you
and
for
we
that.
love doing that. I mean, your venue is fantastic,
Thank you,
and
yeah.
we like having our logo up there, and all the people that show up are fun. And my employees said, well, we talked to some folks and really enjoyed it, and so
Good.
we appreciate that very much. Or just being able to come. We
Absolutely.
enjoyed it. So
yeah, no, we enjoyed having you guys out. I met your team, great people. You know, as soon as y'all come, y'all were already playing the cornhole.
Yeah.
quick. So I was really happy to see.
I was glad they saw me working too. 'Cause
Yeah.
he was laying behind
We-
the desk
we
with a
had-
suit on, and so I was,
Had
trying to
you
say,
back.
I'm here working a little bit. So
Yeah, you gotta have boss man grill. You know, well, because it's representative. You're serving them.
sure,
And as business owners, as where the buck stops,
sure,
you're serving.
Right.
You know,
You
because
bet.
you have to keep your team. Just note it's another way to show that you love them.
right.
Right. And I love that you brought that up. Like that's part of your culture. Is it's done with love.
Sure.
Right.
That's very important to all of us,
It is.
really. So
It is because decision making from a place of love
Right.
is so much more powerful and effective than if you're making decisions out of fear or scarcity.
You bet.
You know, because it's
Right. Another thing I want to mention that we do is twice a year in March and October, we do a volunteer event. So in March, we do Keep Midland Beautiful. We've adopted a block, a city block, the one of Dennis Menace Park. Now, we have half a block because McDonald's is going in the north half of that block, but we still put on the shirts and go out and pick up all the trash and stuff. And we're going to do that a couple times a year just to keep it clean because we're going to sponsor that block. The other thing we like to do is we volunteer at the Texas Size Garage Sale, the Senior Life Midland.
Okay.
They have a big garage sale, and we go and help, cashier or whatever it is that we can do to help them. So we do 2 of those events a year, and then we do 2 fun things. We go-kart racing, or we go axe throwing, or we do an escape room or something like that. Just kind of a team building event. We just have fun.
For sure.
We have lunches on Fridays. If anybody has a birthday, we go and have lunch on a Friday, and we have drinks and food and laugh and talk. So we do that as often as we can.
Yeah.
And of course, we try to have a nice big Christmas party where all the kids can come and everything.
Yeah.
And another thing about our office is we don't have a conference room. We have a room with a big sofa, a PlayStation, a Lego table. We have so many kids. I think we have 13 kids now, but with the new hires, we're going to have 3 more. So we're going to have 16 kids in all, and we need a place for them to go, to be. And because sometimes they're sick or sometimes they're out of school and mom needs to work or dad needs to work. And so we want a real comfortable place for them to be able to, so the 3 kids can lay down all the way or they can play And so we're really a family kind of place.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that the kids are taken care of. So all the parties that we have, they're invited and everything. Just, so try to have a good time as a family.
Absolutely.
So,
So I love that you brought that up, and that's how you guys operate. I want to get to the PlayStation in a minute, to the game, esports. We got to talk about esports.
Sure.
But my business, Michael, he always used to say, when I hire somebody, I'm hiring their family. He's looking at the person. The human that he's going to bring on the team.
Right.
They have a family.
Right.
So my decisions are based for his family or that person's family, right? Because then they become part of your family, right? It's that culture you're building. It's a family culture.
That's right.
And the greatest families are centered around love. So to bring that into the workplace, that's like a beautiful thing. You know, that's that. I
We
think
love
that's
it. I mean, we got a kid in the office at least every day.
yeah.
Addie's the youngest. She's 4, and you can't hardly understand her, but she's so cute that you talk to her anyway. You know.
Yeah.
And the kids are back office working on that video game, and Addie loves to be back there with them. And they let her sit in the lab and talk. You know. So anyway, it's fun. We have a good time.
So let's talk about that. So your kids are developing a video game.
They are. They are.
That is pretty cool.
So they're both graduates of A&M University. Lindsay graduated first and went to work for the engineering department, the neuroscience department in the College of Engineering. And she was she managed the lab where all these experiments and things were happening. She also did social media for them and celebrated the grad students to try to help them get employed. And so Michael finished his degree, and Lindsay's job ended. She was invited to go with the professor up to the University of Wisconsin, and she didn't want to go. And so we just said, why don't y'all come home, take the summer off, don't worry about anything. You can live with us for the summer, and then you can kind of figure out what's next in your lives and stuff. And so about a month and a half in, came to, we eat at the table 5 nights a week. Tracy cooks, and I grate the cheese if I'm needed, but she's a great cook, and we love to be at the table together. We laugh and talk and stay there for longer than we need to, just because we have such a good time. And they said to us, you want to develop a video game. And as a dad, you're like, well, come on now. Is this real? And I have to tell you that for the last 18 months, they've been there 8 to 5, 7:30 actually, 7:30 to 5, and sometimes 5:30, Monday through Friday, and sometimes they work on Saturdays. Now they're using Unity and Blender. Now Michael has the engine built of the battle that's going to take place. He's got the camera movement figured out and the player movement figured out, and now they're working on the assets for the game. Now it's called, what they call it is turn-based RPG. Role play game, I guess.
There you go. Yeah, that's RPG.
Now, it's not my favorite kind of game. I like God of War. You fight, and then you have puzzle, and then you fight, and then you have a puzzle, and fight, and puzzle. And this is kind of like Pokemon, where you go, and then they go, and then you go, and then they go. Okay. And if you've ever heard of a game called Persona 5, it's a similar type of game, and Persona 5 is hugely popular.
Okay.
Now, both of these kids are incredibly well educated. Michael in particular knows a whole lot about the back end of gaming, how it works, and about the companies and how you get your game into the market. And so they're well educated in that regard. I don't know anything about it. Now, I'll support them. I've made sure they had good computers and a nice space to work in, and they're very comfortable. But they're in it. It's not my company at all. It's their company. And so let me back up a little bit and kind of tell you how it kind of came about. So we have 11 kids in our family, and of ages now. Lindsay's 26. There's 4 of them that are 26 now, but anyway, 6 or 7 of them have been playing Dungeons and Dragons for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And if one person can't be there, they don't play. So it's a required attendance. If you're a part of this Dungeons and Dragons, now for 5 years they've had 6 or 7 of them. I think it's 7. Have played every Sunday, missed a few.
Yeah.
And Michael, the one who's developing the stuff in the game, coding, he was the dungeon master. So he developed all of the challenges and all of the islands and all of the things that went with this Dungeons and Dragons game. And so a lot of the creativity for the game and the challenges that they're going to construct with the code and all of that is kind of already a prepackaged deal with all of this, all these things that he developed for their Dungeons and Dragons
incorporating
game.
that.
And so, of course, there's new things, and they have to figure out if it's going to be a monster, or what type, abilities or weaknesses. They have to figure all that out. But that their experience in that Dungeons and Dragons, and Lindsay also played. She's one of the players, and so she understands kind of the direction that they're going, and so it's given them a lot of, a lot in what they're doing, because they know how fun that game's been for so long.
Yeah,
they want to make money, of course. They want their game to get out there and all that, but they want to make it fun.
Yeah,
they want to make it fun.
Yeah, and
they're if they can sell $100,000 copies at $5, I mean, great money, but this kind of game could go to Thailand, to Vietnam, to Spain, to
Yeah.
Australia, to Japan. I mean, it could be, many.
Yeah.
And one of the neat things is the tools that are available to them, since they're making no money, the tools are free. And they're great tools, but they're free because they don't have any income. And I think once they reach the 200,000 a year mark, then they start to be charged for those games.
Oh,
And
okay.
those tools.
Yeah.
They might be $2,500 a month, or big money
Yeah.
for a group like Michael. But today, those tools are at no cost, and so they can really dig in and get after it. And their expenses are low. Really.
Yeah.
So
So
there's
that-
a little overhead. Dad's been a little overhead for him, and which is no problem. So anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure, because
Yeah.
you're supporting something that's into.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like a passion project.
It's going to put them on the map. I really believe that they're going to be successful, and if not, they've learned so much
Right.
about coding and about gaming, and so when they do try to get a job someday, if that's the way that it works out, they have this incredible resume
Right.
now, and so they were going to work at the beginning, and so I didn't worry. And then they showed me all these wonderful things, and it totally changed my perspective on letting them do it, basically. And now, they walk out of there high-fiving each other almost every day from things that they've gotten accomplished.
Yeah.
Because the learning, they had to do the learning. That took about a year, and now they're really having a good time because, they still need some learning in this and that,
sure,
but they're having some success now. So
Yeah.
it's pretty neat.
That's awesome.
See, yeah.
That's all. Just the process of putting something like that together. First you have to learn how to do it.
Right. Sure,
Then
sure.
Creating the vision that they have.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
It's neat. It's neat. And I don't know. Esports is a little bit different. Esports is more of a team.
Yeah.
That are trying to be, your team of paratroopers or, whatever that is. And you're against another team, and so they understand all about that. They understand the speak. And when that gentleman was here, what was his name?
Jesse Chavez.
Yes, he's a neat guy. He was here last night.
He was here last
also.
night,
I
yes,
got
sir.
to visit with him a little bit. And I don't know if there's any crossover type of game and something with esports, but
Yeah.
I do want to support that esports just because I'm in IT and I love gaming. And the truth, gamers are much more successful surgeons. They're much more successful in business. There are many things that a good gamer is capable of because they have to make decisions quickly. Their hand-eye coordination is so well honed from gamer.
Yeah.
And so I always ask an employee, are you a gamer? And if they are, we celebrate that. And people think, oh, he's a gamer.
Right.
And they kind of pigeonhole people into that. But I have totally a different perspective of that. There are always the guys that are in the basement of their mom's house until they're 26, and their mom finally says, dude, you need to do something else. And there's always that kind of person.
Right.
But for the most part, gamers are they just love to game and love that challenge, and it makes them, it hones them, sharpens their skills. And when they get out into the world, they're very skilled individuals just because they're, they can problem solve. And
Right.
So anyway.
The way it's turning out, perception before was, oh, lazy, that's all they do is game. It's going to ruin their brain. All the fear. But that statistic of the doctors, the surgeons, right? That there's so much, I can't remember.
26% better
Right.
surgeons if they were gamers.
Significant.
So if I'm having surgery, I want to know.
You want a gamer.
If that guy's a gamer, because I'll feel a little bit better about what he's capable of.
Yeah.
So
that's
interesting.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
And the education system, STEM, right? The gamers, they're more apt to be able to go through a STEM program and be successful. They don't get lost in the cracks because traditionally, sports, that's like football, baseball, basketball, the big sports, that's what got all the attention. And if you didn't make the team, oh, well, you're marginalized.
Yes.
And that's where all the stereotype kicked in, but now there's a place for kids to go who don't want to go play football, don't want to play baseball, but still want to be part of their school, their community.
Right.
And then I think it's huge because this is another fact that a lot of people don't know. Olympics is now going to have esports.
I heard about that. I heard about it.
So that right there is what really got me to, okay, let me look into this.
Sure.
If this is going to be an Olympic deal,
Right.
it's obviously,
The gaming industry is humongous.
Yes.
And if people don't, people don't understand the gaming industry
Mm-hmm.
is, because, it's huge in just the United States. And we're talking the gaming industry in the world is, one of the biggest markets that's out there.
Yes.
Everybody's on those games.
Yeah.
My son's got 5 of them coming out this year, and we know what dates we're waiting to find out the dates that they're coming out. So,
no, that's awesome.
It-
And then because, this area, our Permian Basin hasn't embraced it yet, but it's coming, right?
I bet it is.
Yeah. And
'Cause there's a lot of great kids in Midland and Odessa.
Absolutely.
That love gaming, and all they have is what they know at home.
Right.
And if there was a platform for them to compete and to meet to have relationships with other gamers, instead of just online with I think it would really take off in this community.
I think so, too.
I'm glad you're supporting that. I think that's great.
Yes, I think it's much needed.
Yeah, I do too.
Our kids need something,
Something safe.
Yes.
Something safe.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hard stuff that you see in a game. There's a lot of reality, and there's a lot of not reality, but and it need to be measured.
For sure.
You want to make sure that that it's not necessarily controlled, but there are some games that are really they're out to make money off kids.
Yeah.
I disagree with that sort of like Roblox. You can buy these tokens and to buy outfits or whatever that is, and kids they want to look better, and that online their persona can be better if they have different add-ons and stuff, and add-ons cost money.
Yeah.
And if there's nobody watching that bank account, I have a good friend. His daughter spent $300 in about a month and a half before they even really noticed, and they went to buy groceries, and they didn't have the money in the account because she had spent it on one of those games.
Yeah.
So that's so there it'll be. I don't want to say controlled, because you need the freedom to play, but there's I'm not sure I know it, because you don't want to be hard on. You don't stop it. You need to foster that creativity, because that's what it's about.
Right.
But at the same time, you need to judge their age, judge how they're doing in other things, to make sure that if you're on track, you can game all you want. If you're not, let's get you on track. Then you can. So anyway, it's just life.
It's life. Right.
And trying to raise kids and stuff like that. So anyway.
Well, John, I've had a great conversation. This is awesome. Thank you for doing this.
You bet. Thank you very much for me. I've enjoyed talking about this.
So do you have any parting words for our listeners out there, who want to start a business or are in a business right now?
So I'm in technology, and so my thoughts kind of go in that direction. People think that because they're small, they're not a target. And a lot of the bad stuff out there is just broadcast to anybody. And so the reason why it's so prevalent is because it's so profitable and people fall for it. And so what I would say is you always need to think about your personal information and your company information, and how much it would hurt you if that information got out there, because you have competitors, and you have the possibility that your business could be shut down, and they could want a couple of Bitcoins in order to unlock your business. And so to have a mindset for security, and to do the best you can with what you've got to try to keep your environment secure. Some people can't afford a $1,000 firewall for their business, but they can be very wary about the other things. And so that's what I would say is, you don't want an outsider that has no interest in you or your business to shut you down because you opened an email that you shouldn't have opened. And they're getting better at that. It's harder and harder to determine what's not real, what's real. And if you educate yourself that are free, there are many resources that are out there with a small business administration or with a company like yours to just have a thought for security, so that you can rest easy and know that your business, that everybody's attacking you all the time, but you shield yourself as much as possible, then those worries are less and you can focus on what you can do, on what you do. If you're worried about IT all the time and things are not working all the time because of this or that, you're spending your energies on something that you're not an expert at.
Yeah.
And if you do need some help, it's easier to let someone else worry about that part of your business that has that expertise. Yeah. And so you just, you use the resources you have available, and if you don't have the money, then you have to think about, okay, now I've got to think about how do I make myself secure so that I can focus on what I do best. And that's where your money is what you do best. And so that's what I would say. That's what I would say.
I like it.
So
I like it. All right, John.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Angel.
sir.
I've enjoyed it. So,
Likewise.
all right.
Thank you, sir.